Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we are starting our Season 5 discussion of Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver.
Excited.
We're going to talk about the prologue through Chapter 5. And guys, major trigger warnings.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crap.
All the triggers.
Just look it up. Look, the book has a trigger list. Like, there's no
like
way
a
for
page
us
worth of triggers.
Yeah, like we can't talk about the book without talking about the triggers. So just look at it and listen with care and take care of yourself. And if you need to fast forward or skip some episodes, that's okay with us.
But don't skip all of them. And if you're not going to listen to our read along, listen to our Tuesday episodes.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes.
So let's get into it. Deb, will you please tell all of our listeners about our nerdiest cocktail?
Yes, and I'll tell you too. Just so you know. I'm just fucking with
I'm
you.
listening too.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of something funny to come
I
back
know.
and I couldn't.
Tonight's drink is named the Blackbird, and it's themed after a serial killing gone awry.
Wow.
This drink pairs well with eyeballs that are plucked, not gouged, monster porn, and orzo pasta. And it may cause a meet cute with the pretty Irish serial killer. He's so pretty.
He really is.
He's so pretty.
He's dreamy.
Okay, so this drink sounds weird, you all.
It really does.
It's got Aperol, rum, coffee liqueur, pineapple juice, lime juice, and simple syrup, which you're like, what the fuck? It's so good. Whitney doesn't think it's good, but Mindy and I think it's good.
I liked it when Mindy switched out. She took out the coffee liqueur and put in spicy.
Ancho chili.
Is it like a rum or
No, it's just a liqueur.
Oh, liqueur.
Yeah, just
it's
like a
real
little chili
good.
liqueur.
It's
So if you're not a
very
coffee
nice.
drinker, you could put a little spice
Yeah,
in there for
spicy
yourself.
something.
But it's quite tasty. And I told Mindy, because we recorded our Tuesday episode a few minutes ago, I was like, make me a double. And she's like, that's a lot of alcohol.
But you're right. It doesn't hit.
It
So
didn't
be
do
careful.
shit. Yeah, so be careful or you'll end up like me and Mindy eating French fries at midnight so she can drive home.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much, Mindy, for the drink, the beverage.
You're welcome.
And thank you for the spicy liqueur
You're welcome.
option as well. And thank you, Deb, for telling us all about the drink. Let's get into the nerdy and dirty recap. We spin the wheel of names and find out who's going to give a recap of the section that we read for today's episode in 30 seconds. The wheel has spoken. Whose turn is it, Mindy?
Congratulations, Deb.
Yay! The first one of season 5.
At least the sections are shorter for season 5 than
Right.
they were for season 4.
Right.
It makes
And
it
we
a little
don't
bit
have like
easier.
80 pages on how a sword was built or anything like that. Okay. Let's
Whenever
go.
you're ready.
Tell me. Yeah.
And go.
Okay, let's start with the trigger warnings and mention that Bryn Weaver loves that we are going to read, even though it has accidental cannibalism. The book opens with Sloane trapped inside a cage with little orzo pastas crawling towards her. She may have to eat them to survive. Rowan sets Sloane free, fanboys over her, and takes her out to eat while staring at her boobs the entire time. Fast forward to 1 year later when Sloane is killing a pedophile for fun and is then summoned by Rowan's brother Lachlan to start their very first contest to see who can find the elusive serial killer. Sloane imagines that Rowan probably has a pretty dick. Sloane read monster porn and shares a bottle of wine with Rowan. And Rowan begs to read Sloane's book so he can learn about Dragon DP.
That's pretty good.
This is pretty good. Excuse me for burping.
She reads monster porn. We need to know. Good job, Deb. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Remember when it was my turn last and I forgot all my notes? You did better.
Sometimes we get through one chapter and sometimes we get through 5.
Yeah.
It just depends on the week.
depends.
Oh, man. Mindy, will you please share with us our nerdiest vocabulary?
I will. I have a very special Our Nerdiest vocabulary. That sounds like an after-school special.
Well, we're...
Or on a very special
Is this
blossom.
your first period?
I mean, we could do a very special episode with all these different trigger warnings.
I know, right?
Like,
So these are all, I just thought it was, because they talk about, Rowan talks about his nicknames, and is like throwing him out there, and Sloane's acting like she's never heard of him, and I just think it's really funny. And so I just wanted to look in to see if there were any like serial killer names that were just weird or
like for
funny.
real.
For real
yeah.
serial killers. So there are some. And while we're laughing at their ridiculous names, I don't want to play down the fact that these were sick individuals who killed innocent people.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not laughing at what they
Right.
did. We're laughing at their dumbass names.
But in the spirit of black comedy, these guys probably didn't care for their serial killer nicknames. So this first dude, he stabbed and killed at least 14 men between 1974 and 75. And apparently he drew portraits of these men on napkins before he killed them. So he was deemed the Doodler.
Oh,
An unfortunate moniker, to be
it's
sure.
like too cute for a serial killer.
I know, but
Like,
Who got him? Oh, the doodler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Doodler.
it's not menacing enough.
You know
Not
what,
at all.
though? We don't, I think in current media, we don't romanticize this like we used to.
True.
Well,
right?
that's true.
Before it was all about the spectacle, and they don't really
Yeah, that's true.
romanticize
That's
the
true.
serial killer anymore, which is great.
But really, even more unfortunately, he was never identified or apprehended. So he's
Oh.
the Doodler. He may still be out there.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well,
Welcome to our nightmares.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
Sorry.
I'm not going to sleep tonight.
Yeah, and it doesn't get that much better with this one. This one's really, really sick. Again, in the early 70s,
Wait.
a serial killer in Manhattan would stab victims to death and then mutilate their genitals with a knife or razor.
Hate it when that happens.
And as gruesome as this guy's crimes were, he came away with the nickname Charlie Chop-Off.
Oh my gosh.
That's fucked up. I'm sorry. I'm laughing.
I cannot believe they gave him that nickname.
Doesn't it just sound like a deranged doll from the 1980s?
It sounds like a dark porn title.
Yeah. So this guy actually was apprehended and stood
well,
trial,
that's good.
where he was found not guilty by reason of insanity and then sent to a
Great.
psychiatric hospital.
Oh, so he did get.
So he got put away.
help at least.
Yeah,
Okay.
he
Good.
did. He did. So, but yeah, I'm sure he didn't
Wow.
love being called Charlie Chop-Off.
I mean, that's like a 14-year-old boy came up with that
yeah, it's
name.
really bad.
Oh my gosh. I've never heard of these, by the way.
I hadn't heard of most of these either.
As a
so-
true crime,
junkie,
person,
yeah.
I'm kind of thrilled that you found things that I've never heard of.
This one is kind of interesting. It's a man named Keith Jesperson, and he murdered at least 8 victims while he traveled across country as a truck driver. So he got his weird nickname basically because he was pissed at someone for taking credit for one of his crimes.
gosh.
So he wrote a confession on a bathroom stall and signed it with a smiley face. So then he was given the paradoxical name, and really not super creative, of the Happy Face Killer.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
I have heard of
So
that.
he was arrested, but I didn't realize it came from the fact that
Yeah.
he was mad that somebody was trying to take
lot.
credit.
It was
A lot.
pretext when he was like, I'm pissed off about this, but I don't want him to seem too pissed. Some
A
of his
lot
smiley
of
faces.
those like 70s serial killers in America, though, like they gave themselves away by doing stuff like that because they're
Yeah.
such narcissists that they
Exactly.
had to get
Egomaniacs.
had to get
I
credit.
need the credit. Yeah.
This dude apparently confessed to several murders in 1995 and is still serving multiple life sentences.
Well,
so
good.
at least he's out of the picture.
Yeah, good riddance.
This one's weird. I don't know. In 1954, there was a 49-year-old woman named Nanny Doss, and she confessed to poisoning 4 of her husbands.
Oh, Black
She
Widow.
apparently was very, like, I picture her like Mrs. Doubtfire. She was very warm and hello. She was very warm and friendly to reporters, so they dubbed her the Giggling Granny.
Ew, that's not menacing
Again,
enough.
we're sensation. We're making.
Yes.
We're turning them into like good people,
Like caricatures.
Yeah, caricatures. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So, but it did remind me of the supernatural couple who sacrifice people at Christmas time,
The
and they
Christmas
won't curse when they
episode.
say "Oh fudge."
Oh
Yes.
fudge!
Oh, fudge.
You fudging touch me one more time, I'm gonna fudging kill you.
Oh man. Okay, so imagine this. You're a serial killer like Donald Henry Gaskins, who has stabbed, shot, drowned, and poisoned 18 victims. You would totally want a cool nickname, right? You would think. But alas, you are only 5'4", so the best that those pesky detectives could come up with was Pee-wee.
Oh, that one I'm okay with. Because it's derogatory to the criminal.
Oh my gosh.
Man.
So okay, hang on. This one just kind of grosses me out, but not in a gory way. You'll see why in a minute. So Alfred Leonard Klein married 8 women. Okay, all of high status. So he could take them on a lavish honeymoon and convince them to sign their money over to him, as one does. Then he would offer them not an alcoholic beverage to toast to the occasion, but a glass of buttermilk.
If my husband on our honeymoon brought me buttermilk, I would be like, we're done.
Immediate annulment.
We're done. Not even regular milk, buttermilk.
Annulment.
Who drinks
The
that? Like,
basis
I
of
don't-
fraud.
Like,
I'd be like, you're using me for my money, aren't you?
Yeah,
you don't even know me, man.
That's crazy.
and it was, of course, laced with sedatives.
Uh-huh.
But they drank, like, who says, yeah, give me a glass of buttermilk? I don't know. Maybe that was a thing then.
That is bizarre.
But so
No.
they take that and they, like, kind of, fall asleep or whatever. And then later he gives him a fatal dose of the sedative. So this guy gets the stupid nickname of Buttermilk Bluebeard.
Oh my gosh.
For the record, we're not laughing at the crimes, we're laughing at the names.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of did the disclaimer.
There's
I'm
going to
like,
be a lot of dark things in this episode that we
Yes,
giggle at.
1,000%.
I don't know. The real head scratcher is why would anybody... Sure, let me drink this buttermilk.
I feel like
I'm not drinking that
you
for any
could
reason.
He
do-
must have told him it turned him on or
You
something.
could do like a dissertation research project on why people drank the buttermilk. Like, how did he get
Right.
them to do it? Why did, like, that is
Yeah.
so,
You know what I really
bizarre.
want for our
Yes.
honeymoon? I want you to drink this buttermilk.
yeah.
I'm like, or a
really
glass
gets me,
of
really gets me
wine.
going.
Yeah, I would.
I don't even
We would
care
not
if it
be
gets
having
you going.
relations after I drank
No.
buttermilk.
You know what?
It's so crazy.
That's true. You do have to wonder, though, if he needed a opaque liquid to hide the sedatives
maybe.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
You
maybe
can't-
regular milk
can't,
was,
like, right.
yeah.
But I mean, regular milk's opaque.
Right.
They didn't have any of that
maybe
2%
maybe
shit back
the
then.
acidity in buttermilk broke down the sedatives
Maybe.
or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know,
I
but-
still don't think it was.
But I
smart.
wouldn't have died because I would have been like, "Fuck you,
I'm not
no!
drinking that
I'm
shit."
going to bed.
Yeah.
I don't even want to have sex now, dude."
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's the last one of those I have. But I do want to leave you all with this thought, and then we can
good.
move on to our favorite moments of the chapters. But I mean, is it really a bad thing to name these douchebags something super silly or just totally banal?
I kinda love it.
Kind of like we were saying. I think this quote from the author of this article, which is called "The Most Ridiculous Serial Killer Names," it's in the show notes, sums it up nicely. She says, quote, "We should just start giving them names like Jimmy, the super loser who blames schoolyard bullies for his lack of erection and kills people." I like that.
Well done. Well done.
I love it, Mindy. That
Thank
was a
you
great
so much.
vocab.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was really fun. I enjoyed that.
If what would people like? What would be the horrible name one of us would get, knowing like our silliness? This may be too off the cuff. Would I be like Deborah the Tired?
I'd probably just be like Whitney the bitch. My kids would call me like the farter or something goofy like that.
Mine would probably
Kill
be
people and fart in their face.
They
They
try
would
to
be
embarrass
delighted.
me and call me like the dildo user or something. I'd be like, okay. Oh my gosh!
You
funny
leave
story.
a dildo as your calling card.
The smut slut.
Funny story, when we were camping, I took some of my toys with me, but I couldn't find them when we got there. I was like, did
I
not-
said in the last episode that all people do on camping trips is fuck, and you were like, no.
No, I said it happens. It's just hard to do.
You have to be really good
Thus
at it.
the toys, right? So, but I was looking for them, and I was looking for something else, and I was like, oh, I found my dildos, really loud, and Derek goes, Mindy, the windows are open.
And then all of a sudden, people are just loitering
I know,
outside
they're
of
like,
your thing.
ooh, there's people creeping on us. Yeah.
Okay, but I have to know, are the windows open when that buzzing sound comes on? Because, like, if it's quiet in the middle of the night, people are like,
There's
Just,
all-
we'll just say it's cicadas.
I was gonna say there's all kinds of things I feel like in especially a vintage RV that you could have that would make like an electricity buzzy noise though. Like
This is true.
it wouldn't
in a
automatically
rhythmic pattern.
Well, not necessarily
And if
that,
somebody goes,
but just the buzz in general could be attributed to many things.
That is true.
All I know is I bought a sex toy when we went on a girls' trip, the two of you, and Whitney looks at me and goes, I better not fucking hear that.
I stand by that.
Whitney, I had to charge first. God.
Oh man.
I
Well,
also try not to masturbate when you're like, there's only like 3 feet between us. You know,
I
Yikes.
appreciate
try. I
myself.
can't say I'm always successful in not doing
I
that.
appreciate the restraint. Thank you. So, reminder, we're talking about the prologue through chapter 5, talking about our favorite moment in this Butcher and Blackbird. Deb, why don't you go first? What was your favorite moment?
Sure. Rowan fanboying over Sloane and learning that she's a huge fan of his, but she won't tell him.
Yeah.
I love that so much. And also during this exchange, he calls her Blackbird for the first time and she calls him Pretty Boy, which
Yeah.
I really love that the nicknames happen in the first chapter.
So quickly. Yeah.
And I love the moniker Blackbird too. And it comes in much
That's
later
sweet.
in the book in a lot of sweet ways. So
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
what about you all?
Mine was basically the same. I just loved the whole serial killer version of a meet cute. Like he's
I did too.
fangirling over him, and he says, "Nice knife. Where'd you get it?" And she goes, "Etsy."
Yeah.
Just like the funny one-liners, and just yeah,
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I mean, that part of the first chapter, but also just the writing choice to just jump right in. Like, you immediately know this is going to be a super messed up book. You immediately know that your main character is morally black, morally gray, if you want to say that. They're serial, like, it's very clear immediately what is going on.
Right.
There's no, like, tricking the reader, and I like that a lot, just jumping right into,
you know what to expect in the first sentence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And since our main characters are serial killers, I wanted to do a deep dive on just the history of, not necessarily the term, but just serial killers as a phenomenon in history and like where that comes from. So longtime listeners will already know I'm very interested in true crime. I always have been. I love me a true crime podcast or a documentary. Those have been what I'm listening to, what I'm watching many times in our episodes. I've always been very fascinated with serial killers and how their minds work, like the psychology of how does that happen, right? So I wanted to just do a little bit of research on the idea of a serial killer and the history of it. So before I get into it, and we've already said this a couple of times, and I just want to reiterate, we here at Our Nerdiest Thing, we are not interested in the glorification of real life serial killers, which is largely men perpetuating violence against women and children. We do not romanticize real life psychopaths. We are not romanticizing real life psychopaths or criminals. Butcher and Blackbird, Rowan and Sloane, they are fantasy characters for us, and our reactions to them and the events in this book are the same as our reactions to Feyre and Rhysand and the events in ACOTAR or any other fantasy world and fantasy characters. So I just want to make that super clear, especially recently on social media, book talk, there's been some romanticizing of literal serial killers, like on trial for murder, and people talking about like how sexy or whatever they are. It's super, super gross. Like, this is fantasy. This book is fantasy for us. So this is completely removed from real life for what we're talking about and the things that we're discussing. So I just want to make that
we have made
very
it clear
a
lot of times. If you don't understand, you're not listening.
Right, exactly. So Butcher and Blackbird. Rowan and wait, nope, I already said that. Okay. Serial killers then. First of all, it's easy for us Americans to think of serial killers as being from just a certain era in our own country's history, like the 1970s, which is how I largely think of it. But there have been documented serial killers over hundreds of years in world history. There are some very obscure serial killers that you've probably never heard of, like Elizabeth Bathory, who killed over 650 girls and women in the late 1500s and early 1600s, and also some very well-known serial killers like Jack the Ripper and Ted Bundy. So what does serial killer mean? Serial killer also could be called a serial murderer, although I don't think I've ever heard anybody say serial murder, but whatever. It's a person.
Doesn't roll off the tongue.
I know,
very
right?
well.
It's a person who murders two or more people. Some resources, or I'm trying to think, sources. Some sources will say 3 or more people. The killings have to take place over a significant period of time, with some time between the murders happening. Serial killers' psychological gratification is the motivation for the killings, and many serial murders involve sexual contact with the victims at different points during the murder process. So the United States FBI, they state that the motives of serial killers can include anger, thrill-seeking, financial gain, or attention-seeking. Those are the basic motivations for these types of criminals. So from that definition, Sloane and Rowan, to me, would seem to fit the anger motivation best. They seem to be vigilante serial killers, right? They're choosing really bad people for their victims, so we can guess that anger towards those people for hurting others, breaking rules, an overall sense of justice maybe is their motive. They're both definitely highly organized, Sloane and Rowan are, in the way that they talk about researching, hunting their victims, as opposed to just randomly choosing somebody like they're doing with this competition. They normally have very specific targets for very specific reasons, right? That would be highly organized. So there's an entire criminology study of serial killers that came about in the 1970s and the 1980s because there were so so freaking many active serial killers that the FBI and police needed a better way to investigate and solve these crimes. So Netflix actually has a great show called Mindhunters that only had a couple of seasons and then got canceled, but it's really
People
fantastic.
loved that show.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's a fictionalized version of this process happening. It's so good. It's very, very interesting. It's
So it's all set in fiction. It's not true crime.
no, it's set in reality, but it's like a dramatized version of what actually happened. It follows basically two FBI agents who they went to prisons and interviewed serial killers.
Oh, okay.
Like they
Interesting.
interviewed different serial killers and talked to them about like their thought process and stuff. And they used that information to help create profiles for like, okay, here's an unsolved case, or here are murders happening in this city. According to like these guys that we talked to, here's the type of person that we're looking for.
Right.
It's
Right.
really,
Wow.
really interesting. Also Criminal Minds, the show that was on for friggin' ever and now is being revived on like Paramount Plus
really?
or
It
something.
is?
Yes. It's like a whole new Criminal Minds evolution or something like
That
that.
has not been off long enough for a revamp.
Right? I feel like it hadn't been off for that
And
long.
it was
but
so beloved.
it's-
They're not going to make it better.
most of the same actors though are back on the show. It's really strange. But
Right.
Criminal Minds is another show that's based on this whole idea. They are studying serial criminals, serial killers. They're creating profiles, looking for these different suspects. So I just recommend those two shows if this is something that is up your alley. All right. So there are a crap ton of different aspects. That's the official term. Crap ton of different aspects to serial killers, different types of serial crimes, common characteristics, and like all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to get into all that stuff because we're going to have a ton of opportunity as we read through this book series. But I did want to mention 3 things for this first episode to kind of set the scene. So first, one thing that I'm super fascinated by is called the McDonald Triad. And these are 3 common characteristics that many, more than half of serial killers exhibit before they become killers. And they're behaviors that can be predictors for future violent behaviors. So the 3 characteristics are wetting the bed past the age of 12, having a fascination with starting fires, and displaying sadistic behaviors, which those sadistic behaviors frequently show up in young children as animal torture
I was just gonna say.
before they become, focusing on people as their victims. So showing all 3 of these characteristics is a huge red flag, huge sign that there is something going on that needs to be addressed with a young child or a young adult. That is more than half of known serial killers in the last 75 years displayed this triad as children.
Wow.
Interesting.
All 3. So that's one thing. The second thing I wanted to mention is the idea of this compulsion that serial killers feel to kill. They are compelled to kill. It's something that they feel that they can't fight / they choose not to. Sloane kind of mentions this at the beginning of chapter 3 when she talks about feeling the itch and how relief is harder to find with each kill. And according to Psychology Today, serial killers have a chronic and overwhelming need to commit murder that distinguishes them from people who kill one time because it serves other criminal interests.
So that's interesting that you said that, because one of my questions was, don't you think Sloane is more of a serial killer than a vigilante, since she has like the craving to kill?
That
she
is a
said
sign.
she gets the shakes and stuff if she
Yeah.
doesn't kill, whereas Rowan, his are very premeditated and it's very vigilante, and he doesn't have to kill to feel better.
Yeah.
And she does. So I felt
would
like
agree with that.
makes her a little bit more of an actual
Based-
serial unaliver.
Based on the evidence, I would agree with you. Yeah. And so last but not least, I wanted to talk about this idea of trophies. So Sloane mentions in the very beginning of the book when she's stuck in the cage, she thinks to herself, I just wanted to set my stage, take my trophy, and leave. Right at the very beginning of the book, she says that to herself. So I just wanted to explain what a trophy is for any listeners who may not know as much about this as me, because I'm a weirdo. So basically, a trophy is an item that a killer takes from a victim to keep after the fact, either as proof of their skill as a killer or as an item to help them relive the murder to fulfill that need between victims. And so this is something that you'll read, if you read about a criminal being apprehended, they'll talk about finding evidence in their home, or sometimes there will be like a hole in the wall or something like that where there's just stuff. And it can be literally anything from the victim victim. John Wayne Gacy, a very famous serial killer here in America, kept things like a class ring from victims, while Jeffrey Dahmer kept body parts in his freezer. Those were his trophies, right?
Well, and not so much in this book, but in Leather and Lark, we learn a lot about trophies.
Yeah, trophies are a really big part of that. So, like I said before, there's a lot of rabbit holes that we could go down with this topic of serial killers. And between these two books that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure we will. But this is just an overview. It's a little bit of context to help with these main characters. And, you know, we can talk about more fun things now. But the book has a lot of trigger warnings, which is why we told you to check them at the beginning. So I am always super interested in this kind of thing, which I don't know. Sometimes that worries me about myself that I'm so interested in true crime, but this is right on my alley.
I think it is a healthy way to almost feel like an adrenaline rush learning about these things.
Yeah.
I think it's a healthy, because, you know, anthropologically speaking, we're not running from predators and doing all these things, right? So I think any type of risky behavior is filling that anthropological need for the adrenaline rush.
My previous therapist too told me that she thinks my true crime focus is anxiety driven, because she's like, because this is very true. She says that subconsciously I think, well, let me just find out everything I can about what happened to these people, and then I just won't do those things, and then I'll be fine. Right? Like, let me find, how did all of this play out, and then I just won't do those things, and then I'll be safe. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right.
That's honestly why I don't do it, for the same exact reason, because I'm like, well, shit, all I want to do is go to the park, and now I can't go to the park by myself. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it freaks me out on the other end, whereas for you feel like prepared.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, I always, like, when I'm somewhere by myself, I always have something in my hand where if someone attacks me, which is awful, because men don't have to do that.
I know.
But, you know. Yeah.
Well, that was all of our favorite moments. So let's talk about our least favorite moments. I will go ahead, because mine is really gross. The stomach bursting open and the maggots coming out, that was really nasty.
That's pretty gross.
I could handle a lot of things. I was like, ugh! I had forgotten that happened.
That
was my least favorite.
Sort of like mine. It's not really my least favorite moment. Just that Bryn Weaver's description of a putrid, rotting corpse was just a little too good.
And
like, I'm
dial it back a little bit.
And I'm like visualizing it, which I have actually seen a corpse before that has not been immediately, anyways, I've seen one that's been there a while. And it's gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree.
So I will say Bryn Weaver co-wrote a book with Trisha Wolfe, who we met at Less Than the Low Country last year, and I'm actually listening to her arc right now. But they wrote this book called Marrow, and it's all about these two serial unalivers who can cover it up because they work for a body farm as researchers. And her descriptions of the stuff in the body farm will make you like sick to your stomach.
I mean, she's just really good.
I was going to say, it's such
writing.
good writing, but at what cost?
Right. My lunch.
So my least favorite moment was just Sloane's craving to kill. Like, we just talked about this. Like, what happened to you, girl? Her story is barely referenced in this book or in the next book, and we still don't know what happened to her in college, which I really hope is wrapped up in the final book in this trilogy, because if not, I'm going to be like, what the fuck? But I feel like the author has talked about it too many times
to not fully flesh it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to go back to my question of, is she a serial killer or a vigilante? And that question really made me wonder what types of vigilantes there actually are in the real world. So I find myself as the reader feeling justice in what Sloane and Rowan are doing, since they're fighting the good fight, right?
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that they're both still serial killers, which, is bad.
Yeah.
Killing people is wrong.
Right.
So I wanted to see what kind of real life vigilantes were out there, and I found way more that I can list here. There's a lot, but I just want to discuss a few. So first we have the Alaskan Avenger, who was a serial killer who targeted 3 pedophiles off a sex offender list. And you all, this happened just in 2016.
Dang.
The Avenger was arrested almost immediately and remains in prison to this day. So he found a predators list, like a, what's it called? Like a offenders list.
Yeah.
And sought out these 3 people and planned on taking out more.
Wow.
But got caught you know, went to prison and was like, yeah, I killed them. They're horrible people.
Yeah.
Like, zero remorse.
Wow.
So the next one is somewhat wholesome. The Bromley Batman hunted in the streets of South London, stopping crimes as a masked vigilante. He never killed anyone, unlike most of the people on this list, and was quoted, "I am doing this for future generations to feel safer. I have seen the world get increasingly dangerous and unstable." And then he says, "We all need to stand up and be counted, not stand by when people need us. Let us please try to leave the world a better place for our children and learn from our previous mistakes instead of making the same ones over and over again." So he stopped robberies and stuff. And he got
sweet.
He got famous, and I forget exactly what it is, but there was a city official that he saw getting mugged, and he stopped it. So then he got kind of famous, right? Yeah.
That's
so
really
he's in
I
South
imagine
London.
him going home to his wife and putting his slippers on and his sweater vest
You're like,
and
"I did
watching the
good.
news.
I did good today, babe."
Right.
Oh, I love
So
that.
I'll give you one more feel good one before we get to the real grit in this list. And this person's name is Phoenix Jones. Phoenix is an American real life superhero and mixed martial artist. Initially wearing a ski mask to intervene in a public assault, he later developed a full costume and adopted Phoenix Jones as his pseudonym. From 2011 until the dissolution of this character in 2014, he was the leader of the Rain Stop Superhero Movement, a Seattle, Washington-based citizen patrol group that described themselves as a crime prevention brigade. And Jones says the best way to prevent getting mistaken for a criminal by the police is to wear a super suit.
That's awesome.
Okay, so most vigilantes are a part of a group.
Yeah.
Much like we see Sloane and Rowan pair up, right? So these groups are generally known as death squads, which are armed paramilitary groups formed to kill a particular set of people. So that's what we're going to get into. Let's start with Flores, I'm going to say this wrong and I'm really sorry. Floresvaldo de Oliveira, a.k.a. the Cabo Bruno, who was a former officer who he just started taking matters into his own hands. So he was targeting criminals from Sao Paulo's smaller suburbs and districts, and he shot and killed around 50 drug dealers, pimps, and thieves between 1982 and 1983. So in 1 year, 50 people.
That is a lot.
Whether he acted alone out of zealousness or he was a part of a police death squad has never been fully established.
Oh my.
So they don't know if he was a part of a larger group or not. Next, we have the San Francisco Committee of Vigilance, which was formed in 1851 to combat a group of Australian immigrants who created what is called the Sydney Ducks Gang. The Sydney Ducks set San Francisco ablaze a couple of times and demanded protection money from shopkeepers in exchange for not being set on fire or assaulted in the future.
Don't do that, you guys.
Right. It reminds me a little bit of the Bonds That Tie.
Yeah.
What those guys are doing,
Yeah.
right? Of course, the San Francisco Committee of Vigilance was controversial, as some people seemed to be executed in retaliation instead of actually being involved with the Sydney Ducks, which is like when it was just like they're trying to stop this gang, they're like, oh, it's fine. But then they started to figure out they would hang people in the streets, essentially. So the next one is the Los Pepes. They were a real-life vigilante group who hunted down Pablo Escobar in Colombia in the 90s. They would hunt those affiliated with Escobar and, again, hang them in the streets, which I guess is just so people can see it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And finally, let's discuss the Sobra Negra, which is a death squad group that captured Southern California and Mexican gang members and sexually tortured them, often including the removal of their genitalia, hands, tongue, rectum, and teeth before they killed them.
Jeez.
And they would write things on their chests and leave them to be found so they could have messages from their death squad.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So you had some people stopping Pablo Escobar. You have some people
just being assholes.
Mutilating genitals.
Right.
You have some people who are trying to stop pedophiles, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, they were just mass murdering people.
Right.
Right.
Except for the grandpa that went home and watched the news.
Right, yeah. Except for, let me
In
tell
our
you,
minds.
Phoenix Jones and Bromley Batman, those were two wholesome vigilantes. They weren't hurting people, they were just stopping crime.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't the movie Nacho Libre about vigilantes?
No.
No,
No.
not really. I think you're thinking of Batman. I'm just messing with you.
Nacho Libre is about like
Wrestling.
Is it really?
Yeah, like a
I don't know
wrestling
why I was
character.
thinking-
Yeah, what are the wrestling people that wear the masks? What are those called?
That's a really great question.
I'm so sorry that
Thank
I
you
don't
for
know
asking.
this.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's about that.
One of our listeners will tell us.
Yeah, please do.
There is a movie out there similar in like vibe of that, of Nacho Libre. I don't know, I can't remember what it was.
Does it
I
also
don't know.
have Jack Black in it?
I don't think so. I think I don't think so.
So do you all think that Sloane's a vigilante or a serial killer?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
What
think
about
both.
Rowan?
I think both.
Yeah. I mean,
I think he would be more on the vigilante side. He doesn't as far as you know, he's not
I was gonna
killing
say-
people in between.
We don't
Their
get
kills.
a ton of information. We don't get as much information about Rowan in these
Shit,
chapters
he's too
as we do
busy
about
starting
Sloane.
restaurants. He
Well,
doesn't have
he's-
time for that shit.
He's just thinking about her boobs while she's telling us about her, compulsions, and he's like, her boobs look great.
right.
She's not wearing a bra. Boobs.
Boobies.
So let's talk about our biggest revelation, because mine, I'm just going to piggyback off of your deep dive, Deb. My biggest revelation is that our serial killer main characters specifically choose victims that they deem as horrible people, right? Which I feel like as a writer for Bryn Weaver, like that's the only way that you can make your main character serial killers, because that's the only way that you can make them like likable, is to give them that sense of vigilante
So
justice,
let me ask
right?
you this, and this is moving forward to Leather and Lark, so spoiler alert if you've not read that yet. Lark kills an ex-boyfriend. So did he do something big where she was like, now you deserve to die?
Believe so.
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I
Because I
believe
was
so.
going to say, it didn't make me like her less.
I don't fully remember, but I'm
Right.
pretty sure that there was
We've only read,
something.
We've only
happening.
read that book once, friends.
I know, right?
I've read this book 4 times.
Yeah, give us a few weeks to get back
Yeah,
to that
yeah.
section. And then,
Speaking of Lark, my biggest revelation was I had totally forgotten that Lark knew about Sloane's extracurricular activities from
Yeah.
the get-go. Like, for some reason, I was thinking there was some kind of reveal or she figured it out or something. But no, she already knows.
yeah, that was one of the things, writing style, that I like, is in the similar way of like, let's just start the book in the middle of a murder. Let's, they have people that know their secret. We're not going to make that part of the story that there's a big reveal. That's something that's already happened in the past.
Which I thought was refreshing.
I really liked that a lot. Yeah, that was fun to read.
So speaking of Sloane, she's in my biggest revelation as well, and it's that she plucks her victims' eyeballs and makes maps of the places where the serial killers have left their victims, or their victim locations, or where they've committed the crimes.
Right.
It doesn't really say. First, this takes some serious crafting skills, and second, it is a pretty cool calling card for Sloane.
Yeah.
Third, plucking eyeballs is hard. Apparently, you can pop an eye out of socket with your thumb, but it takes tons of force, and you still need a sharp object to sever the eye from the nerves. And there's also some instances of psychosis where someone, and this has happened 4 times, someone has popped their own eye out. Oh, God. But I'm going to save that for another episode.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I
No,
think it's
they
cool.
can't
that-
wait.
I think it's cool that Sloane has like this skill, and then she makes little craft projects with it. I mean, but also that she's literally telling the FBI where these crimes have been committed, and the FBI is like, "There's eyes on a wire."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It shows her level of intelligence to be able to plot that out.
Right.
And pluck that out. Well, let's talk about spicy scenes. There's not really spice, but there's, some banter and some other stuff going on. What did you guys choose?
I liked when Rowan gets a stiffy just from watching Sloane eat ribs.
I wrote in my notes on that section, like, is that a thing where if you think
If
somebody's
she's
hot,
sucking something off a bone, you don't think a guy would get a boner?
but
from
that's
that?
what I'm asking. That's my question. Like, is that a real thing? Because I feel like
Oh, for sure.
for me, I would get distracted by the
No,
the grossness
if
of
you
it.
were
You know?
eating ribs and sucking on the end of a bone, Robbie would be like, huh.
Well, that's true. But
Right.
fair point.
So speaking of Rowan, mine is whenever Sloane keeps thinking about how pretty his dick probably is.
Because he's so pretty.
Because he's so pretty.
I bet
Pretty
everything's
boy.
pretty. Yeah, I really liked the flirting and the banter, especially at the diner. And then when they both get to the hotel in West Virginia at the end of this section, I really love that they're just very run of the mill romance underneath this like ridiculous, like, well, but they're serial killers. You know what I mean? Like this fantastical setup that they're serial killers. It's every rom-com trope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Rowan's
I think that's
hey,
fun to
I
read.
stole this bottle of wine.
Yeah, I think that's really fun to read. I really enjoyed that a lot. So I wrote the same romance tropes I love from a Tessa Bailey book underneath the guise of a serial killer.
Yep.
Who did you guys pick for your chapter MVP?
I want to know who yours is first. Whit.
Mine, I picked Rowan. I just find him very charming and endearing. He is the reason that I like the banter. I like the way that Bryn Weaver writes him and the way that he talks. And you can just tell without even Sloane telling you can just tell that he's really hot. Like he's got that BDE.
Yeah, he does.
And he rescuing her from the cage at the beginning, which is very necessary for the story. And I felt like that was MVP, MVP moves there to rescue our main character and get the story going.
I picked Rowan for all the same reasons. Just for saving Sloane. He comes up with the whole contest idea, right? Yeah. Because he wants to see her again.
Yeah.
And then
he's
he's
hang out with her.
Genuinely cute and sexy at the same time. Like, just, I don't know. He's book boyfriend material.
He really is.
Aside from the serial killer aspect.
We'll just pretend like that.
Yeah.
That's
Morally gray.
Right.
So my chapter MVP was the orzo pasta. And I've never been a huge fan of this pasta, but much like seeing maggots in the Chinese noodles in the Lost Boys movie.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever be able to eat orzo again.
Yeah.
But I do feel like calling the maggots orzo pastas was a great way for the author to describe Sloane's mental health in that moment.
Yeah.
And sets a hilarious tone for the entire book.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because, you're like, she's thinking about eating those magnets and she's trying to think of them as orzo pasta. And you like see this desperation in her.
Yeah. She's been in there for a couple days.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Again, good writing.
Yes.
But at what cost?
The lo mein and the orzos out for the rest of my life.
No.
Yeah.
What about your favorite secondary character?
My secondary's off the cuff too, so it's monster porn. We find out in this section of the book that Sloane apparently has Kindle Unlimited, right?
Yeah.
She describes the MC of the book she's reading as the sentient dragon man has 2 dicks and he knows how to use them, a forked tongue too, and a very talented tail. And I just loved that. And if you've read the book, you know that there's jokes about this even through the end, which I
It's an
really
ongoing
enjoy.
thing.
Yeah, but I'm like, see, she reads monster porn. We can too.
Yeah. She's just like us. Mindy, who was your favorite secondary
Mine was
character?
Lachlan because I love that
too.
he is just actively rooting for Sloane and calls his brother a loser.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I liked the eyeball spider lady. Like that's what he calls
love
that's what he
that,
calls
yeah.
her. That makes me laugh.
And then he's like, well, what should I call her? And Rowan's like, fucking queen? I don't know.
Yeah, not that. No, and I really love Lachlan because I've already read Leather and Lark. I love him. I wrote he is my favorite tortured soul. I just love him so much. But I love the eyeball spider lady. That made me laugh quite a bit. There are lots of quotable, funny things in this chapter. What did you guys choose for your favorite quotes?
Go ahead, man.
I have 3.
Well, I said favorite quotes.
Yeah.
I knew
you know who you're talking to.
I have 2. It's fine.
I loved, this was just a really quick one. I loved when Rowan said to Fionn eating a raw carrot, take a vitamin. You look like a douche. And then my last 2 are Sloane. So she says to Rowan, well, be prepared, pretty boy. My stomach has been eating nearby organs for the last 3 days, and I'm going to devour these fucking ribs in the most unladylike fashion possible.
Yeah, I liked that a lot.
Just
too.
very, very Sloane. You kind of get the idea of who she is from the get-go. And then when she says to Rowan, no boys allowed unless they have scales and a breeding kink. And then Rowan says, of all the times to forget my dinosaur onesie.
Okay, so my favorite quote I think comes right after that, and it's when he says, "Come on, Sloan, I need some Dragon Man DP."
He's just funny. Everything he says is
He's
funny.
hilarious.
I have two favorite quotes, one from Rowan and one from Lachlan. So Lachlan is the good luck eyeball spider lady. That made me laugh a lot. And then Rowan at the very beginning, pretty sure this is the first thing he says in the whole book. That's a shame. I bet I would love your wicked ways. Like that's how he's introduced.
Hello.
You just, he's hot without any description. He's got it, guys. He's got it, and he knows how to use it. And
Was he in our BDE episode? I don't think we talked about him, did we?
That was a gross oversight.
That was a missed
We're
opportunity.
We're going to go back and edit that in.
Shame on us. Shame on all of us. So we've mentioned a few questions as we've been talking, but what are some questions that you guys have that need to be resolved?
Because I talked about why did Sloane start killing predators? Like, what is her story? But my other question is it Finn or Finian, their other brother? Not
Fionn.
Fionn. I'm sorry. Why did he move away?
That was my question. What's his deal? He's an enigma. I have no idea what's going on there.
It's like he was trying to get away from them, but he's still, like, there's still something about him. Which the third book is about him.
I was going to say, he's like a secret, like, body parts dealer or something. I don't know. Like,
there's
something going on there.
Yeah. My big question, as somebody, who has read Leather and Lark, I really want to be able to take the time to find the overlap in the timelines between Leather and Lark and Butcher and Blackbird. And, for example, if you've read Leather and Lark, the very beginning of the book, Lachlan picks Lark up, not knowing who she is, not knowing Sloane yet, right? So, like, when Butcher and Blackbird starts and Rowan and Sloane meet, has Lachlan already picked up Lark? Or has that not happened yet?
Remember,
you know what I mean?
They're real friendly at first, and then they become not. So I think he has, but then they figure it out. So, yeah, I think he's already picked her up.
Like, that initial meeting has already happened.
Yeah,
but he just doesn't know that he's going to have a connection to her later on.
Right.
It's that kind of stuff that I would like to plot it all out, because we get some more information, very little, but some more information about Fionn in Leather and Lark too, which again, I'm like, when's that happening? So anyway, that's my whole thing with the timeline. Were there any other questions?
I'm just looking forward to more banter from Rowan and Sloane.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I'm looking forward to more Lark. I'm really loving revisiting her after reading her story and, like you said, putting some puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, me too, for sure. Yeah, I wrote continuing the witty banter. I really like the slow burn, and bring me the spice. Bring it on. What are you looking forward to, Deb?
Really just watching the competitions, right? And that's one of my favorite parts of the book is how competitive they get with each other, because I'm very competitive.
I was gonna say, that speaks to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, because I would be the same way. I'm like, I'm murdering him first. And especially, and again, spoiler warning, especially when they go and have dinner at the guy's house. That's like my favorite scene in the entire book. So whenever Rowan gets all drunk and tells her he loves her and shit, it's just hilarious.
Yeah, that's one thing too that I'm looking forward to is, as a second read, slowing down and catching the details I know I missed the first time, because that's the bad thing about being a fast reader, is that I miss some really fun stuff. And when I go back, part of the reason why I reread, because I know, like, I read this too fast because I wanted to know what was going to happen, right? Like, I want to keep going, and I want to see the plot, but I miss a lot of stuff. So it'll be nice to slow down a little bit. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about, tidbits or anything else?
I don't think so.
I think we covered quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this episode. Next week, we're going to be talking Butcher and Blackbird, chapters 6 through 9. We'll see you then.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.